ask you, how important are clean clothes to you? I see a lot of heads nodding. My grandmother always told me that you should never leave the house without putting on clean underwear. Well, what if you got into a car accident and had to go to the hospital or something, she would explain. And when she would say that as a kid, for a moment, I would think about smarting back and explaining the likelihood that even if I were wearing clean underwear prior to the accident, it might not stay that way. But I'm still old enough to remember when making a comment like that can result in getting a smack in the ears, so I kept my mouth shut. I was sharing this story with Jessica, and she laughed, and she said, my grandmother always said that too. How about you? Have you heard that? Okay. What was up with people just a few generations ago that they lived with such anxiety about getting into an automobile accident with dirty underwear? I don't get it. I personally try to wear clean clothes every day, regardless of whether or not I think there's a chance I might get into an accident on that day. But once your grandma, once she ingrains a thought like that into your head as a child, it continues to shape you whether you like it or not. So I remember this sage advice while I was getting ready to go on vacation. I started packing all my clothes and making sure that I had plenty of everything. Hey, Jessica, are you going to do some laundry before we go away? I want to make sure that I have enough of all that I need. And she yelled back, she said, yeah, I'm doing it right now. And that's when she noticed water on the floor. Right when we were packing, right when we were getting ready to go away, the washing machine decided that was a good time to go to leaking. Impeccable timing, right? As if we weren't already stressed out with enough to do. So what are we going to do, Jessica asked. I can't live without a washing machine. We can't get ready to go like this, and then when I come back, all of our clothes are going to be dirty. We've got to do something about this. Now, I could have called Chuck with House and Grounds, but we were getting ready to leave in a couple days, and I knew that it would take a while for somebody to get to us. If I called Chuck, then that would mean the whole time that I'm gone, that there would be strange people coming in and out of my house, fooling around with the alarm, and I just didn't want the stress of worrying about that while I was gone. And I knew exactly what would happen if Chuck called a repairman. Not only would it take several days for him to come, most likely, even if he said yes to fixing the washing machine, it'd be several more days that he'd have to order parts. It would just be a long, drawn-out situation. And in reality, I knew what would happen if a professional repairman took one look at that washing machine. It's not exactly new, and I've already done some tinkering to it in the past, so beware. But I'm doing that because in reality, a repairman is going to look at that washing machine and say, my labor is worth more than what that washing machine's worth. So basically, it's up to Pastor Phil. As long as I can tinker with it and keep it going, we can keep using it. But the day it's beyond my abilities, it'll get tossed out. Now, as you know from the kinds of cars that I drive, that having something new and shiny is not what excites me. All I want is for something to be reliable. And in reality, a brand new washing machine, it probably won't be more reliable than the one I've got. In fact, these new washing machines, they just add more electronic components. It's more problems to break. Yamira's had me looking at her new washing machine, and she'd rather have her old one back too. So Myra said, yeah, keep fixing the one I've got. So that's what I decided I would do. That the best thing for me to do was to tackle it myself. So as soon as Jessica walked out of the room and I got her out of my hair for a minute, I got out my screwdriver and I started taking the cover off of it. And the whole cover of the washing machine slips right off, so I had it sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. And when she came back, before she knew it, the washing machine was dismantled, and I'm down on my hands and knees looking at the motor and the guts, trying to figure out what's wrong with it. And sure enough, I was able to identify the leak. I did something kind of crazy with the cover off of it. I ran it through some of the cycles. So there's this bare washing machine, you spin it in the middle of the room. But as soon as it got down to the spin cycle where it dumps the water out, I saw that it had sprung a leak internally with a plastic flexible drain hose that runs it to the back of the unit where it then can be piped out. And so the only way to fix it would be to replace this line. You see, that drain line, it's very important. You can't clean your clothes if you don't have somewhere for that dirty water to go. That's an essential step in the process, is it not? You've got to have somewhere for that dirty water to go. So all I had to do then was to fix that one line, and everything would be okay. So by this time, it was probably 10 o'clock at night, so I knew there was nothing I could do but just put it on hold till the next morning, wait for the stores to open up. So I went down to the local appliance shop downtown, and I held my breath, knowing that I would hear those infamous words, "We'll have to order that." I knew that's what they were going to say. But I crossed my fingers, hoping that wouldn't be the case. Yeah, I was already formulating my backup plan in my mind, but I figured I would at least give it one shot. I'm going to try to fix it the right way, and if that doesn't work, then I'll engage some of my creative engineering. But we'll try to do it right for a change. So I slapped the busted hose on the counter, and I said, "I need one of these. Do you have the make and model number? We'll have to order that." And no, I explained, I'm heading out of town. I've got a wife at home with a dirty laundry basket full. I just need to enable her to wash these clothes today. So it's just a simple little plastic line. I'm sure there are lots of other units that have something very similar. It doesn't even have to be for this washing machine. I could cut the end off and I can make it work. Do you have anything back there that looks kind of like this? No, I don't think we have anything back there that looks similar. We'll just have to order you one. So I said, "No, thank you," and I walked out of the place. Well, conveniently enough, across the street is the auto parts store. So I walk in there with my hose and walk up to the girl at the counter, and she just grins at me. She says, "What's your make and model?" I said, No, I'm not working on a car this time. Actually, I'm trying to fix my washing machine. And I need a hose about this long and about this diameter." And she quit listening to me. But she said, "Hey, I think we might have what you need. Just you follow me and see if you can figure it out yourself." So she didn't want to hear any more of my details, but she was nice enough to take me right to the section. I'm walking in the back of the room like I'm an employee now, looking at all these different hoses. And sure enough, I was able to find one that was shaped exactly like I want and the right diameter and everything. So I made my purchase. It was really cheap, really simple. Got home. I'd say within 20 minutes or less, Jessica was back to doing laundry. That was successful, right? Now, if it bothers you to know that there's now a radiator hose holding together your pastor's washing machine in the parsonage, if you want to, you can call a repairman and get them to fix it their way. But I can pretty much guarantee you that the way I fixed it, it's going to probably last a lot longer than that hard plastic line that fatigued and broke and cracked with age anyway. Well, now you know more about your pastor's dirty laundry than you ever wanted to know. But now that we've talked about my dirty laundry, now it's time for us to think about yours. Because the truth is, we never know what's going to happen to us when we walk out of this door. When we walk out that door each morning, my grandmother was right. We could get into a car accident. But the dirty laundry that you need to be concerned about is neither Hanes nor fruit of the loom, but your own spiritual condition. If you were to get into a car accident when you leave here, do you know that you are spiritually clean? Are you right with God? Or do you have some unfinished business that you'd have to attend to first? The reality is we don't always get a second chance in life. Things can change for us in the blink of an eye. And that's why we have to get right with God. And we have to get right with each other. And we can't put that off. We have to do it immediately. We don't have time to wait for someone to order a solution. We've got to do it now. But too often we walk around with dirty underwear, spiritually speaking. We might have a shiny, clean-looking exterior, name brand clothes, all freshly ironed. But that doesn't do us a bit of good if we are dirty underneath. If we have clean clothes on the outside, but we're filthy on the inside, we're still going to stink, right? It's like washing your clothes with a bad drain line. You can dump all your clothes in, you can add all the soap and all the water you want to, but your clothes are not really going to get clean unless you have somewhere for that dirty water to go. How are you ever going to get clean if the washing machine, when it kicks into the spin cycle, it dumps all the water into your house and you find yourself standing around in your own filth? Now, Jesus talked about the very same thing. He talked about this in Matthew 23, verses 25 through 26. He said, "You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean." And in verse 27, he goes on to say, "You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside they are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean." You get that image? All white and shiny on the outside, but dead on the inside. So Jesus says that we have to first clean what is on the inside. Before we can clean what's on the outside, we have to prepare what is on the inside. And before we can clean what's on the inside, we have to have somewhere for that dirty water to go. What you need is some spiritual bleach. Psalm 51:7 says, "Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow." Isaiah says, "Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red as crimson, they shall be as wool." Now, if we turn to Jesus, then we can be dipped in that water and we can be brought out clean. Those red stains that we had no way to remove ourselves can be bleached out and taken away. God has the part that we need. God has the plan to drain all that filthy water away. And it doesn't take a part that needs to be special ordered. You don't have to wait until next week for it to get here. You can experience that power in your life today. Because the part that you need, the part that you're missing, it doesn't come from an appliance store. It doesn't come from the auto parts store. There's no special assembly required. There are no technical skills needed. You don't have to wait for it to come in the mail, because the missing part that you need was already sent 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ is the hose that connects our sinfulness with God, who can make it all go away. Jesus can make you whole again, and without Him, you are incomplete. What you need is a broken and contrite heart. As this same Psalm 51, it says later on, "You do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit. A broken and contrite heart, God, you will not despise." So God it says that God doesn't need our burnt offerings and our sacrifices, although don't let that stop you from making a sacrifice in life. There's benefits and blessings that come through that. Don't let that stop you from sharing food with someone in need and looking out for the poor and the oppressed, as we heard Isaiah saying a while ago. This affirms here that God doesn't need your money. God doesn't need your credit cards, although it certainly is appreciated when you drop something in the plate when it goes around to further the ministries of this church. It says here that God doesn't need all these things. Instead, what God needs above all is for you to humbly approach Him, admitting when you've done wrong. What is needed here is that broken spirit, that contrite heart, that willingness to say, "Lord, I'm incomplete without you." If I just denied that the washing machine was broke and we kept dumping clothes in there, the filth would have just kept spilling out of the machine. And that's the way sin is in our life. If we just try to ignore sin, it's not going to go away. Instead, it's just going to make a bigger mess, and it's going to fill our house, and then we're traipsing around in it until finally it's spilling out the doors, and it's coming out the front door into the front yard. And next thing you know, guess what? The neighbors now know just how filthy we are, because we've been ignoring that sin in our life. Instead, what we need is to humbly admit when we've made mistakes. That's the sacrifice that God really desires, that we would lay ourselves bare before Him, that we would quit trying to fool Him like we try to fool everybody else by covering up the stink with cologne and putting on some clean clothes to hide our filth, because God sees right through all of our pretense. You're not fooling God when you try to deny what's been going on, because God doesn't just look on the outside of the cup. He knows what's on the inside. So quit pretending and be honest with God. If you ask God to cleanse you, if you ask God to forgive you, He will. It's like the instructions in this psalm here. Listen to the rest of the psalm. It says, wash away all my iniquities and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. You see, he's not denying the sin here, but admitting it. Against you, you alone, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Yet you desire faithfulness, even in the womb. You taught me wisdom in that secret place. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. If you pray these words sincerely, you will be saved. If you come to God with that sincere desire to be better, you will be cleaned. But let's be real. You didn't get this way overnight, and your problems are not going to magically go away. I know you saw that when I demonstrated with the kids, that like magic, all the sin just went away. Well, in reality, you don't just take your clothes and drop them in the washing machine and then pull them out immediately and expect them to be clean, do you? Instead, they have to go through a process. They have to go through all the cycles. There's a cycle when the water floods over those clothes. There's a cycle when the soap and all the enzymes begin to penetrate and lift those stains up off of there. There's a cycle that begins to shake and agitate those clothes up and down a bit. And that can't be easy for those clothes to endure that. That's those times of trials we were talking about. Then there's a spin cycle, and it makes me dizzy just thinking about it. But that's when all the water gets squeezed away and all the filth gets drained away. But when your clothes finally come out of that washing machine, then they are ready. They are ready to face the world again. That is, at least until they get dirty one more time. Well, that's an apt description of what the spiritual life is like. There are moments when you are just completely flooded with God's blessings. There are moments when you are engulfed in the Spirit and you just feel the power of God's presence. In those times, your emotions may run high. Worship is filled with joy. The power of God's Spirit just seems all-encompassing. But then there are times when the penetrating power of God's Spirit has to dig in deep and separate those stains in our hearts. We go through periods where we feel convicted, periods where we have to make some changes. It's in those times that we really begin to take a hard look in the mirror and realize just how filthy we've become. Then there are those times in life that seem to agitate and bounce us around. It might be due to our own choosing, but a lot of times that agitator, we're thrust upon it, and life is just shaking us all around beyond our control. Those can be trying times. They can be times of testing. They can be so difficult to go through, but at the same time, that can be a critical point of deciding whether or not you're going to hang on to those stains or whether you're going to truly let them go. Going through those trying times can build your character and cause you to rely on God to do for yourself what you couldn't do without Him. But if we stay the course, if we go through these cycles and make it all the way to the spin cycle, well, then we're ready for the next round, and that's when the water is extracted and all that filth is taken away. And then, like an article of clothing, we're ready to be worn out in public again. But where are you in this cycle? Where are you right now? Are you in need of some deep cleaning in hot water? Or do you simply need a delicate wash? Are some of those stains, have some of them been neglected? They have been set in because they've been there for so long? Would you benefit from having a little spiritual bleach in your life? Our life with the Spirit is one of a continual journey. The need for God's cleaning in our life is never done. In Philippians 2:12, Paul says, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's why we have to keep coming back to church each week. It's why we have to keep turning to God in prayer each day. When you clean your clothes, you wouldn't just clean them one time and expect them to stay that way, would you? Then why do we treat our faith that way? Like a one-time dip in the water is all we need. But at the same time, Do not confuse your need for cleaning with your need for salvation, because there is a difference. As Paul says in Ephesians 4:5, there is one Lord, one faith, one baptism. You don't need to be baptized over and over like you throw your clothes in the washing machine. Baptism is different. Oftentimes we confuse this because we describe baptism as being like this one-time bath that washes away all of our sins. But that's not exactly right. Because what happens when we come out of those baptismal waters and we get dirty again? We sin again. In our baptism, we are not declared forever to be clean, but forever to be claimed. It's not a promise that we will never again sin or make a mistake. Instead, it's a promise that when we do, that God will throw us in the hamper rather than in the trash can. It's the beginning of a lifelong journey, a journey of ups and downs, a journey of spiritual cycles that will spin us into a more Christ-like version of ourselves. Our baptism marks the beginning of this process, not the end. But what our baptism does secure is that we are claimed by God. It is in those baptismal waters that we discover that we belong in God's wardrobe. It is as though God has written His name on our tag in permanent ink or monogrammed His name on our sleeve. We are claimed by God. We become a garment in His care. And Jesus has gone on ahead of us to prepare a place for us in God's closet. For in the Father's walk-in there are many shelves. And in our baptism we discover that there is one labeled just for us. But we want God, when He comes to get us, to put us on that shelf, we want Him to find us cleaned and pressed and neatly folded when He comes for us, worthy to belong in the wardrobe of a king. So ask God today for a little spiritual bleach. Let us pray. Lord God, as we gather here today, we do so confessing that we are sinners. We may have been baptized many years ago and committed ourselves to You, but maybe we have been neglecting the journey, a journey that's never complete. While we were saved, when we were baptized, we are being saved as we are transformed by the renewing of our minds, as we become more and more like Christ. And that journey is never complete. Not until the future glorification when Christ returns and declares us to belong in Your presence. Only then will we be made fully complete. Lord, wherever we are in that journey, I pray that You'll get us to the next stage, to the next cycle, that we return to You realizing that without the power of Your spiritual bleach in our life, that we are left with nothing but sin and regret and guilt. Free us from that we might be the best version of ourselves. In Jesus' name.